a trip to the country park. As a birthday treat, my mum and dad took me to the country park. We even took our dog, Boffin. We drove in and found the car park. It wasn't too full. However, this car park was for staff only. I asked Dad what the staff did, and he said they had to check that the trees were growing properly at all times. So we drove on. Not through here, though. We soon found the correct car park. We had to go in this way. We weren't allowed to park here. My mum has an ingrowing toenail, but Dad said that didn't count. Dad parked our car nicely between a tree and a stump of wood. These signs made sure we didn't forget to pay for our parking privileges. Here is the ticket machine. A big lemon-coloured sign made it nice and clear. We bought our ticket and displayed it boldly on the dashboard so that the parking enforcement officer would see it. We had to make sure the car was locked because there were thieves everywhere. The park was crawling with them, apparently. They hide in the treetops. Dad said it was just scaremongering, and Mum gave him her look. Then we saw this sign growing on a tree. Dad had second thoughts about his blasé attitude. He went back to the car, took his £5,000 in loose change off the back seat, and carried it with him. When we came out of the car park, we had to be careful of the road. This sign made sure that we didn't get all smashed up by a car driven by an escaped lunatic. Roads are very dangerous, especially busy ones like this. This sign told us to clean up after our dog, Boffin. Mum said she wouldn't touch Boffin's droppings if her life depended on it. It was a bright, crisp and sunny day, and we went for a walk around the trees and stuff. This sign also told us to clean up after our dog. Dad said that if Mum didn't pick up Boffin's outpourings, he would rub her nose in them. Some of the trees were very big, and some were very small. There were no medium-sized trees. We weren't allowed to cycle up this path. Dad said it was because the bicycle's tyres would damage the ground. The forest was brown and green, but mainly brown. We weren't allowed to cycle here either. Dad said that if he had his way, no one would ever be allowed to ride a bicycle again. We had to keep Boffin on a lead. Fortunately, we had 5 leads with us, one for each of his legs. The ground was wet and muddy. Then we saw a sign that said there was to be no splashing in puddles by angry teddy bears. Fortunately, there were none about. Then we went to the field. There was a sign saying that no one was allowed to park their car next to the field because emergency access was required at all times. Dad said this was in case the field needed to be hospitalised if it got injured by a man walking on it wearing a particularly heavy hat. You weren't allowed to have barbecues in the field. There was a designated area for this. High Hill Field was 6 miles away in a different country park. It was too windy for a barbecue anyway. I wanted to go on the swings. They looked like fun. I ran up to the swings enclosure with a surge of excitement in my belly. However, being 35, I was not allowed to play on the swings. Mum said that she wouldn't be able to supervise me at all times anyway. The equipment was wet too. Dad said it was too risky. What if my bottom slipped off the swing and I broke my kidneys? Dad was disappointed he wasn't allowed to fly tip his sofa. Boffin was disappointed he couldn't play with the children. I was just disappointed generally. But it's better to be safe, I suppose. Then we went back into the forest. There weren't many flowers. Perhaps the angry teddy bears had eaten them all because they were a bit cross at not being allowed to splash in the puddles. This area was reserved for bicycles, so you weren't allowed to walk here. It was getting quite confusing where you were allowed to cycle and where you weren't. What if you were on a designated cycle path and got off your bike and walked? Would someone arrest you? Then we saw the visitor centre. We were a bit hungry and decided to stop for something to eat. but we weren't allowed to eat our own food there. Funny, because there was no other food on sale in the visitor centre. Mum said they were encouraging people to lose weight. Dad looked at Mum and said it was a good thing too. No more than 10 school children were allowed in the shop area at any one time. I wasn't completely sure what the shop area was. Dad said it meant the shop and anywhere within a 5-mile radius, which was a real nuisance for the local primary school just over a mile away. We weren't allowed to smoke, eat, or drink in the visitor centre. You were also forbidden to bring wet netting in. Imagine how awful it would be to slip on a puddle caused by a dripping net. In the end, we decided it would be for the best if we didn't go in the visitor centre. We weren't sure whether it was open anyway. Dad wanted to make a phone call to warn the visitor centre about a nearby child with a dangerously dripping net. We found a phone, but once he saw this sign, he thought better of it. Dad didn't want to go back to prison again. There was another play area near the visitor centre. I felt the same surge of excitement in my tummy. But again, alas, I was too old. Besides, constant supervision of me playing within my capabilities without dogs, bottles, glasses, smoking or ball games didn't sound like much fun. Then we walked down to the river. I was eager because I had not seen a river before, let alone a tide mark. On the way down we passed a pond and stopped to have a look at it. The pond was so indescribably dangerous that words could not express it. I guess they felt the blank sign said enough. I had no idea a country park could be so dangerous. I began to feel unsafe and sick. Were we all going to die here? Then we got to the river. I couldn't see it because someone had filled it with water. We couldn't get too close because it was a private river. Dad said that if you went down there, you were liable to be shot or have a fish thrown at you. This second sign was here in case people hadn't seen the first sign. You can't have too many signs, apparently. We headed back up and along the road. Dad said that the whole park was designed to be a massive logic puzzle. You had to work out which activities were allowed in which areas, so your brain got an exercise as well as your body. We think this sign was misspelled. There were no horses emerging from the left. All we saw was a tiger emerging from the right. Then it was time to go home. We had all enjoyed our trip to the country park. It was fun, safe, and no rules had been broken. Dad said he liked nothing better than following rules. I asked Mum if we could go again, and she said that if I was really good all year, they would let me out of the basement on my next birthday. End